In there that I want to make again. There's been a lot of focus and talk about a failure in governance, and I'm not excusing that. I think that there were some governance problems at APH. But when you read Graham Smith's report, there was an obvious failure of management, and not the current management, but the previous medical officer of health. The previous medical officer of health, in my opinion, and again speaking solely for myself, didn't serve this agency or this board well, and didn't give this agency or this board the information they needed to make proper decisions. So I'd like to take a bit of focus off the board for a brief period and actually look and talk about and focus on some of the managerial problems that were here. And Graham Scott's report was very clear about those. I know as a mayor and person who sits on city council, we really rely very heavily on getting proper information from staff. And we really rely very heavily on staff conducting themselves properly. In the end, am I responsible if people don't? Yeah, absolutely. And that's what governance is about. Governance is about oversight. But the Board of Health wasn't responsible, based on reading Graham Scott's report, for the hiring of or the retention of Mr. Rutenberg or Mr. Rothberg. It might have been something that got by them, but it wasn't something they were responsible for. And that was something that Dr. Barker was specifically responsible for. I think it's important to note that.
Just back to Marshy Rooney for a second. Yesterday he made a comment to me that he believes there should be a councillor on the board because City Council provides 25% of its funding. What's your opinion on that?
Well, City Council provides 25% of its funding, so we get to appoint directors. I think there's a lot of sense in Graham Scott's recommendation that we appoint a skills-based board. And it's not necessarily the case that we have the skill set on City Council. We might sometimes, but it's not necessarily the case that we will year over year for specific boards that we appoint to. There's a lot of qualified, capable people in the community that we can choose from, and I wouldn't agree with the proposition that a councillor has to sit on this board. I would think that there are lots of capable, competent people in the community that we can appoint to this board. Councillors are spread very thin. They have full-time jobs. They have a very demanding councillor job. On top of that, there are some boards and committees that we do participate in because they are directly related to city activities. And adding these extra boards to them, it's really onerous. So I'm friendly to Graham Scott's suggestion, and I do not believe, just to answer your question directly, that just because we fund, there should be a councillor there. Because we fund, we get to appoint. That doesn't necessarily have to be a councillor.
So what should the city do, Mr. Mayor, to move forward? There's now a new chair and a new vice chair. You did mention the KPMG findings. You're willing to assist the board of directors there.
I don't think the city can do much with respect to the KPMG findings. I'm sensitive to the legal issue because I think there are some contractual obligations that prevent them from handing the document over. If you agree by contract that you won't release something, or there's a term of a contract that requires you not to release something, you need the other contracting party's consent. It's not clear to me what the second contractual term is. It was indicated that the KPMG report needs their consent to be released.
Could that be a condition they had with Barker's resignation?
Could be. That's an interesting question.
So what about in general? As mentioned, there's a new chair and a new vice chair. What will the city do to help them move forward from
this? The city has to make 2 appointments. But before the city does that, and I spoke to the clerk about this, and I think we have to have a discussion at council about it, the report suggests that we go through essentially an appointment process with the other stakeholders to make sure we get a skills-based board. So we have to figure out what that looks like and how that is going to come to pass. But the city has 2 appointments to make, and we can look at, I guess the stakeholders can get together and look at the skills that are currently on the board, look at the number of seats that are available, and figure out what skills would be missing that we could supplement. Might be determined that it would be good to have a lawyer on the board. And if that's the case, then the city could go out and find a lawyer that's willing to sit on the board and appoint a lawyer to the board. So we have to work with the other stakeholders to, frankly, implement some of the suggestions that Graham Scott's made.
Good, thank you.